Welcome to episode 67 of Cameron Sports Podcast. I'm your host here, Cameron Lindsay. Today's episode, I'm going to be doing my first ever UFC episode, pay-per-view that I'm going to be talking about real quick. Like I said in the past, that I'll talk about many sports, not just football or basketball, but I'm starting to talk more about UFC. I already have started watching UFC, but I wanted to start talking it on my channel like I do WWE. And what better way to start off talking about UFC than this big pay-per-view this Saturday, UFC 309, with the main event, Jon Jones, the undisputed UFC heavyweight champion of the world, versus former two-time UFC heavyweight champion, Stipe Miocic, if I'm saying his name right, who's arguably the greatest heavyweight in UFC history. Today's episode will be about, and I'm going to give my predictions. I got a few stat notes here. I want to talk about each fighter, their accolades, their fighting style. So yeah, let me get straight into it. Waste no time. Start off with the challenger, Stipe Miocic. I'm sorry if I'm saying his name wrong. His fighting style includes a combination of wrestling, boxing. He has a ground and pound offense. Like I said, again, he's a former two-time UFC heavyweight champion. I forgot who he defeated. I watched his highlights, who he defeated the first time, but the second time he defeated Daniel Cormier to become a two-time UFC heavyweight champion. That was back around 17 or 18, somewhere around there. He defended his title 4 times, which is a record he holds for the most consecutive title defenses, 3. And he has the most finishes in title fights with 4. Again, he defended his title 4 times, which is a record. He has the most consecutive title defenses with 3, and he has the most finishes in title fights with 4. He's tied with Randy Couture for most wins of UFC heavyweight title fights, and tied for 4th with most consecutive knockouts in UFC history. Stipe Miocic stands at 6'4", about 240 pounds, maybe 250. But around the fight, I probably expect him to be around maybe 240. I think Jon Jones, when he won the heavyweight title about a year last year, I think Jon was about around 250. So I expect Stipe Miocic, maybe around weigh-ins, he could be 250, but he's usually walk around weight is 240 pounds. Like I said, he's 6'4", same height as Jon Jones. But watching Stipe Miocic's highlights, like I said, very good with his hands. A good combination of ground and pound, boxing, wrestling. Like I said. And he's arguably one of the best, probably the best UFC heavyweight of all time. Well, like I said, we can see, depending on him and Jon Jones right now, his overall record in UFC is 20 wins and 4 losses. So he definitely, he definitely has an argument for that, of being the best heavyweight in UFC history. Jon Jones, the champion, has a record of 27 wins and 1 loss. Really, to me, I think Jon Jones should be undefeated. His only loss is due to like a stoppage, because he was doing an illegal move, which I think right now in UFC is legal. I think I saw something about it online that they might or should get reverse Jon Jones' loss, because I ain't gonna lie, in my opinion, he should be undefeated. Because nobody has come close to beating him at all. Like, I've seen Jon, in my opinion, I think he's the greatest UFC fighter in history. Even Dana White has said that. Like, Jon Jones, if I had to make a list of the baddest men on the planet, and only could give 5, Jon Jones would automatically be on that list. Automatically be on. If I had to go to a bar fight with somebody, it would be Jon Jones. I would want Jon Jones. Him or Brock Lesnar, but definitely Jon Jones. But yeah, Jon Jones, his fighting style includes a variety of kicks, clinch where he controls his opponent's arms and delivers elbows and knee strikes. So he likes to do that. He has a real good ground game and defensive wrestling. So he definitely has a background of wrestling. So it's really not easy to if you do take him to the ground. It's really not that easy to take Jon Jones to the ground at all. He's most likely going to counter that. Some of his UFC accolades: he was UFC lightweight heavyweight champion from 2011 to 2015, and again from 2018 to 2020. So he's a two-time UFC light heavyweight champion. I think clearly the best UFC light heavyweight champion of all time. So just like Steve Miocic is arguably the best UFC heavyweight, Jon Jones is clearly the best UFC light heavyweight of all time. I don't think it's close. Maybe Alex Pereira. Hey, it could be second because the way he's doing right now, he's killing it in the light heavyweight division. So yeah. But also another accolade that Jon Jones has, he became the UFC's 18th heavyweight champion of the world after defeating Sarli Gang at UFC 285 in March of last year. I was watching that fight. I was at Twin Peaks, one of my best friends, which, where we're going to be at this weekend, watching the fight with Jon Jones and Steve Miocic for UFC 309. But yeah, that's how Jon Jones became heavyweight champion. He won with a submission in the first round, I believe. I think it was the first or second round. I think it was first. He won with a submission hold. He got a nice choke under. He got his arm on his chin and got a real nice choke hold from the front, not the back. But he got him up under and made him tap out. He also holds the record for the longest win streak in UFC. He has the most wins in UFC light heavyweight division. At just 23 years old, he became the youngest UFC champion after defeating Marcio Shogun at UFC 128. His 15th title fight wins is most in UFC history. He has 16 consecutive championship bouts, which is also longest in UFC history. But yeah, this right here, I was there was a chance that this fight was not going to happen, but like I said, I'm glad it looks like it definitely is. Like I said, when Jon Jones won the title last year at UFC 285, he did call out Steve Miocic, and because like I said, I think Jon, he really wants to solidify that he's clearly the best ever, and I think the top fight like this would definitely solidify that if there's any arguments. But yeah, these two men, like I said, measurables. They're both 6'4", both 50 pounds. Both have a lot of accolades in the UFC and outside of the UFC. And watching Steve Miocic's highlights, like I said, I do respect them. I'm saying they're both older now, but Jon Jones, the way he looks is like he's still 23. So I don't know if Steve Miocic, how he's going to look in this fight, but I think it'll be an entertaining fight. I hope it goes at least 3 rounds out of the 5 rounds. But if I had to pick a winner, which I am, I'm going Jon Jones. Mainly because I have yet to see Jon Jones be dominated at all. He's just a beast. That man is a beast. Wrestling, hands, kicks, his submission. It's like he could do it all. I've seen him go toe-to-toe with Daniel Cormier and obliterate him. And Daniel Cormier is one of the best in UFC history. Daniel Cormier was the UFC champion in 2 different weight classes, light heavyweight and heavyweight. So if Jon Jones can dominate somebody like Daniel Cormier multiple times, I know Steve Miocic, him and Daniel Cormier went back and forth. So Steve Miocic does have win over Daniel Cormier, but he dominated him multiple times. And I just don't see no way that Jon Jones loses this fight. he literally took like a couple years off, trained, and got his body right to move up to the heavyweight division after being in the light heavyweight division for all his career and won the heavyweight championship. So there's no reason for me to doubt Jon Jones. Now, like I said, if you going Steve Miocic, let me know in the comments why. I know, hey, I'm all ears, but I definitely going to be watching this fight. There's also some other good fights too. A co-main event: Charles Olivier versus Michael Chandler. I definitely look forward to that fight. Also, you got Bo Nickel versus Paul Craig. In the women's, you got Velvanine Arjo versus Kyrene Silva, and also in the men's, Marcio Ruffa versus James Lontop. But I think it's gonna be a good pay-per-view. This is gonna be a good main event. I can't wait. The card, I think it says it starts around 9 p.m. Yeah, UFC starts around 9 p.m. The main event probably around. I live in Alabama, Georgia, so the main event's probably gonna start around like 12 midnight, 11, 12. But again, I'm going Jon Jones over Steve Miocic. I'm gonna say, I'm gonna go knockout early third. I'm gonna go knockout early third by Jon Jones. Jon Jones knockout TKO in the early third round for Jon Jones. But yeah, let me know in the comments who you like in this fight. Again, this is my first UFC episode. Not too long. Like I said, this is not gonna be the only one. I want to make sure to do it for real big fights like this, because Jon Jones is my favorite UFC fighter of all time. I've been knew who he was for years. But like I said, do more UFC fights, like whether it's Alex Pereira or Israel Adesanya. I'm definitely gonna be try to do more UFC episodes for y'all. But I appreciate each and every one of y'all tuning in for another episode of Cameron Sports Podcast. It's episode 67. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe. Follow me on Instagram at Cam_Lindsay24. Also follow my podcast on Instagram at Cameron Sports Podcast. And follow me on add me on Facebook at Cameron Lindsay. And you'll see Cam right next to it. So that's my Facebook. But yeah, I appreciate each and one of y'all tuning in. And I'll see y'all next time for another episode of Cameron Sports Podcast.